that we do and some of the exciting research that we're doing, as well as some of the curriculum that we have that makes Hood unique to many other schools, the other peer schools. So again, my name is Dr. Diane Graves. I am a child clinical psychologist, and I thought what would be fun is not only to share a little bit about the department, but talk a little bit about how I became a psychologist. So I'm not here alone. I'm here with my co-host, Melina Verity, and she is waving right now. So she's going to be keeping an eye on the chat room. For those of you who are familiar with Zoom, down at the bottom on the side, you'll see a little chat icon. And so if you have a question, please don't hesitate to type in your question. Melina is going to be helping me out by keeping an eye on that chat room. And if there's a couple of questions that are popping up that I can address at the end of our time together, I would be happy to do so. So that's going to be a best way for you to chime in and get your questions asked. So again, welcome everyone. This is a psychology session for Hood's Admitted Students Day. And again, my name is Dr. Diane Graves. I'm a child clinical psychologist and tenured faculty member in our department. So what I'm going to do is actually share my screen with you. I have a short presentation that I wanted you to be able to see. Might answer some general questions about our program. And so let me go ahead and get it going. There we are. So in case you're wondering who the psychology department is, these are my peeps. We are all from different backgrounds, have different areas of expertise, and we would love to have you come and join us in our department. So first off, what are you going to do with a psychology degree? Well, there are many options where a psychology degree can take you. Perhaps you're interested in medical school. Perhaps you're interested in going on to graduate school in many different areas, for example, history or sciences, literature. We are a great foundational degree for people to be able to have a strong research foundation as well as a strong foundation in human sciences. And so psychology degrees tend to take you nice places in grad school. In addition, some people might want to become educators or education administrators or teachers in some way. This is an excellent degree for you to go on and become a teacher, become an educator. And finally, there are going to be some people who are maybe interested in law school. Psychology undergrad degrees are very strong for law school. But these are just 4 examples of pathways that you can take. The most important thing, though, is to make sure that you've got some key facets from your undergrad experience that are going to help you to go wherever you decide you might want to go after college. One thing, you're going to need a strong academic foundation. You're going to need research experience. You're going to need applied experience. You're also going to need something that we at Hood call in our department complementary experiences, and I'll explain what those are in a moment. And importantly, you're going to need mentors. That's where I come in and my colleagues come in. We would like to be your mentors. So I thought what would be really helpful is for you to have an idea, how did I come to like psychology? Because we all have our own pathways and how we get to where we are. So without any further ado, we're going to go a little bit into my history, and I'm going to talk to you about how I became a psychologist. So of course, I was going to be a vet. When I was in about 6th grade, 7th grade, that was going to be my goal. I was going to take care of people's hurt animals and make them better, and I'm a big animal lover. Unfortunately, I shadowed a vet for about 6 months and realized people come to vets with animals that in fact are hurt or that are sick. And all I would do is just cry. So that wasn't really helpful. I don't think you'd want to go to the vet and have your vet start crying because your pet is sick. So I realized probably being a veterinarian was not going to be my calling. So some of you might remember or have had this experience yourself. In the 8th grade, I had to do a science fair project. I don't know how many of you also had to do science fair projects even up through high school, but you run an experiment and then you collect the data and then you have this trifold board and you along with your classmates give a whole presentation. So I had to do science fair and I was looking for something really interesting to do for that. And at the time, my mom had gone back to school. She had dropped out of school to help support my dad in grad school. And so she was going back. I was in in junior high. My sister was in high school. So she was taking a psychology class. And lo and behold, I saw her psychology textbook on the table, and I started flipping through, trying to find an idea for my science fair. And I saw this picture, or similar picture in the book, and I was like, what are they doing to that baby? So I spent some time reading what was in the book about this visual cliff. And here was the setup. The idea was they were wondering if babies around 6 months old, because that's when they start to crawl, plus or minus a month or two, could they see depth? I mean, why do you need baby gates at a stairway, right? Can these babies see 3D? So psychologists, who are actually very creative people, developed this very interesting contraption. Actually, it was Eleanor Gibson and Richard Walk back in 1960 who designed this visual cliff. And it looks like that contraption right in the middle picture. You've got a baby on one end. On the other end, you have what appears to be a cliff. Notice there's glass there so that if the baby does cross over, the baby's not going to fall. So like no babies were harmed in this experiment. But they would have the mother or attachment figure on the opposite side of that apparent visual cliff to see if the babies would crawl to them if they were called. And you'll see on both sides, you'll see pictures of babies engaging in the visual cliff experiment. And lo and behold, they found out that babies didn't just randomly crawl across the cliff to get to their moms or their attachment figures. They went across the cliff. They would be very wary of going across the cliff. So babies can see depth. This is where my brain got started thinking about my science fair, because I thought this whole setup was fascinating and really interesting that babies would be able to see depth if they had the right way of showing us. So I had guinea pigs, right? That was one of my things that my sister and I both had as family pets. I had 2 guinea pigs, she had 2 guinea pigs, and we were pretty excited about the whole idea of doing something with my guinea pigs for my science fair project. Well, she wasn't as excited, but I was pretty excited. So what we decided to do, my dad and I built a visual cliff in our backyard for guinea pigs. Because do guinea pigs see depth? I mean, I don't know. And so what I did is we made a long runway. It was about 6 feet long, and I hand colored in all of those checkerboards. Remember those checkerboards that you see in the picture there? I hand colored in checkerboards because I'm older and we didn't have computers at home. And I made this long uninterrupted runway for the guinea pigs. And what I did is I started my experiment. I established a baseline. So what I did is I went ahead and put the guinea pig on one side of the runway, and I put something they really wanted on the other side of the runway. Now, if it was a girl guinea pig, what they really wanted was food. If it was a boy guinea pig, what they really wanted was the girl guinea pig. So, because they were kept in separate cages. So that's the incentive. And so they would learn to run down my runway. And on average, when I established my baseline, it was about 13 seconds on average. And then came the experiment. I interrupted the runway with an apparent 1-foot cliff. Now it was covered with glass, just like in the experiment in Eleanor Gibson and Richard Walk's experiment. So if the guinea pig went across, they wouldn't get hurt. No guinea pigs were harmed. But it looked to them like there was a 1-foot drop and they couldn't go around it to get down to the other side of the runway. So I put the guinea pig down on one side. I had my timer ready, and here we go. Is the guinea pig going to cross the cliff? So I'm going to take a moment for you to think about this. Is the guinea pig going to cross over? Do guinea pigs see depth? I'll just ask how many people say yes, how many people say no, guinea pig's not going to cross. How many of you have no idea whether my guinea pigs crossed my visual cliff for my 8th grade science fair? Think about it. Place your bets. Guess what happened? Not a single guinea pig crossed my visual cliff. 2 minutes I halted each trial when they wouldn't even go across. Remember, they had done it before in 13 seconds, and they would just stay on one side. They would go right up to the cliff and they would back away and stay on their side of the visual cliff apparatus. And I was like, oh my gosh, research is cool. Like this whole thing that I was looking at, this psychology thing, this thing my mom had brought this book home for, this was really awesome. So our science, the science of psychology, is built on why we think what we think, do what we do, and feel what we feel. we have a wide range of questions that we have about these very issues, but at its core, that's what psychology is all about. So I decided to major as an undergrad in psychology, and then I went on to get my PhD in child clinical psychology. And that is my current area of expertise. So I'm the kind of psychologist that helps children, teenagers, and families with hurt thoughts and feelings, with assessment of or diagnosis of psychopathology or mental health conditions. I also do research in developmental psychology. So I have a pretty busy life and I love it. So maybe I wasn't meant to be a vet, but I absolutely was meant to be a child clinical psychologist. So let me tell you a little bit about the psychology major at Hood. I just want to remind you that Melina is here in our room and you're welcome to add something to their chat shortly, and maybe in about 6 minutes or so. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. She'll ask me some of your questions and I'll answer as many of them as I can. What I cannot answer, we'll be sure to get back with you with more information so that you can make an informed decision. So I'm going to take a very short break here and say congratulations. This is a very exciting and scary time, but let's focus on the excitement right now. I mean, you're going to college. This is amazing. This is something you've worked really hard for, and we're all very proud of you. I know your families are incredibly proud of you. I also want to give you my support because I know this isn't exactly how you saw your senior year was going to wrap up. You didn't think that you would be in the situation that you're in now. You'd just as much like to be in and attending admitted student stay than doing this online. So I just want you to know I recognize the stress that you guys are under, and I recognize how difficult this time is for you. And a lot of you are grieving over the loss of things that you would have wanted otherwise. You would like a prom, you would like graduation, you'd like to see your friends, you'd like to see your mentors and teachers. And I'm very sorry that your senior year is ending this way. So I'm proud of you and I'm very sad for you. But just think, you guys are like the most resilient class, man, class of 2020. So let's talk a little bit about what we do in our psychology and counseling department. So first off, we have a psychology major. We also have a psychology minor, as well as a 5-year dual degree program. Now that program will mean that you're going to school every summer and it's very intensive. And so if you're interested in that 5-year dual degree plan, you're going to need to talk to the advisor during freshman advising. They'll do that probably online over the summer. You're going to need to let them know that right away so that you can start taking the classes immediately for that dual degree. Um, so we also, as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, you're going to need a solid academic foundation. This is what you're going to get from our psychology major as an undergrad. Really, we have a tremendous depth in the courses that we offer in psychology, and I think you're going to be well prepared should you choose to go on to law school, medical school, graduate school. You're going to have the foundation in academics that you're going to need. Your reading skills, your writing skills, your critical thinking skills will all be extremely strong. The other thing that we emphasize in our psychology department is research. I mentioned you're going to need some research experience to be able to go on where you'd like to go with your psychology degree. Every single one of our psychology majors conducts a research experiment as part of a 1-year long course sequence. You will do research. You will collect data. You're going to take that science fair idea and you're going to put it on steroids, right? You're really going to have a chance to do some pretty intensive and incredible work with a lot of hands-on guidance and support from faculty. So every single student will do a research project, and every faculty member has research labs. We welcome students to come into our research labs, especially after you've had intro to psychology and a statistics class. And some labs like you to have that research sequence completed, and then you're welcome to come onto our research labs. We are always publishing with students, going to conferences, academic conferences, local, regional, and national conferences with our students. There's a lot of very exciting things going on with our students. There's also, oh, my cat's making an appearance. Hi, Pongo, sorry. Cats get low-key famous right about now when we're all online. We also have some applied opportunities. So we're really building up our internships. We've had students do internships in some incredible places because of our location. So Hood College has, we're right in Frederick, Maryland. Oh my goodness. We're right in Frederick, Maryland, and that's going to allow, hi Pongo, same cat. Um, we have the research corridor. We've got things like the APA. We've got it kind of depends on your areas of research interest, but we've got a tremendous number of opportunities for you to go off campus and work for academic credit, and get some of that applied experience. And not only is that applied experience really important, there's the importance is building a professional network, because as you build that professional network, that's going to help you when you start looking for jobs, internships and jobs. Also, one of the ways that we've emphasized expanding just on our psychology foundation is to suggest complementary experiences. So part of being a psychology member or psychology major will involve you doing something beyond just the department. So we have the Psychology Honor Society, Psychi, study abroad. We're going to emphasize going away. We're going to include and emphasize you to have to go to something called in-depths. Those are monthly case seminars that we have where our the psychology faculty who have applied degrees like counseling and clinical and community psychology, where we go ahead and take you on a journey. We tell you all about some of our most interesting and provocative clinical cases. We go through the details of the case, what it is that we do. We go in depth. We do that every month, and if you attend 5 of those, you'll get a professional development certificate. I don't know any other undergrad institution that has these types of case conferences specifically geared for our undergrads. So those are the kinds of complementary experiences that we want you to have. Again, study abroad, maybe a double major. Our major is flexible so that we allow you to be able to do double majors. We also allow you to consider minoring in something. And again, I mentioned study abroad, but those are things that we really encourage our students to do. So the last thing that was on that list, strong academic foundation, research experience, applied experience, making sure that you have complementary experiences. You're going to need mentors. Part of being in college is developing mentors. And here are potential mentors for you. We are a very friendly, warm group of folks, lots of different personalities. We're kind of well known, I gotta say, for being a very collegial department, very friendly, sharing all kinds of resources, and growing, thriving part of, and very vibrant part of Hood's campus. We have the majority, I would say, on campus of the Summer Research Institute grants. What those are, they allow students to work over the summer under the guidance of a faculty member. It's a $3,500 stipend for the student, and they get to stay on campus for free, and we do research all summer. And so that's amazing. And I'd say at least 5 of these folks have Summer Research Institute grants that will be happening this summer. So hopefully, I know I've got one, and I'm going to be working with my students. It might end up being virtually, but we've got a lot of exciting research to take place. So I'm going to go ahead and exit this and stop sharing my screen and come back and say back hello. I'm going to check and see if Melina has any questions for me that I might be able to answer.
At this time, we only had one chat question from Caitlin, and she was asking if this is a good program if you want to enter into being a foster care therapist.
Oh my goodness. Okay. The answer to that is yes. One of the things that I would encourage for each of you, and it's not going to be something you might have thought you were going to hear me say, is that I need you each to promise me that you will not major in psychology unless, okay, that's an unless, a little asterisk, unless you plan to do a little bit more. In other words, most people with an undergrad alone degree, a standalone degree, are not going to be in a situation to do the kinds of work that you might want to do with your degree. What makes psychology such a nice versatile degree as an undergrad option makes it a little problematic as a 4 and out option, because it's so it covers such a broad range of possible options for you career-wise that it becomes difficult for it to target you for any one specific career without some additional training. What do I mean by that? I mean master's level grad school, doctoral level grad school, just some additional training. If you want this to be a 4 and out degree, then you are in the perfect situation to make that happen, because what you're going to need to do is really work hard on your summers, what kind of volunteer opportunities you're taking during the school year, that you're getting yourself out there to get the experience and make the connections, which again, we can do through our internships, but you want to start doing that early and often. Those are the folks who end up getting a job right out of undergrad with a psych degree where they can use their psychology. For someone who's interested in doing counseling work, especially with foster kids, first off, that's awesome. Second off, what you're probably going to end up needing to do is going to get a master's degree in counseling or clinical, at the very least, so that you'd have that the credentials to be able to do the kind of counseling work that you're going to need to do, and appreciating the different issues that those foster kids are going to be facing. So what you would probably need to do is think about going into an undergrad degree in psychology, and then going on for that additional 2 years or so in a grad program to get your master's degree. Hood actually has a master's degree in counseling. We're a newly accredited program. We're newly because we're brand new, but we've got now a number of cohorts that have come through the department and come through that program and are now licensed clinical professional counselors in Maryland. So that is a 60 credit hour program that does allow you to sit for licensure in the state of Maryland, as well as DC and Virginia. So we are really proud of that program. Part of the dual degree program would be going 3 years basically to get your undergrad degree, and then the 2 years of the master's program. But that is a very rigorous degree. It does involve night classes and summer classes. So again, if you're interested of doing that dual degree, you'll need to talk to your advisor now, because it will directly impact the classes that you can take.
We
Anything
have,
else?
we have another question that asks, is this a good major if you want to be a neurologist?
Ooh, yes, because neurology means you're going to medical school. So as I mentioned early on, one of the things that they're going to be looking for is for you to have a nice exposure to basic sciences, basically pre-med. We do not have a pre-med major, but we have strong sciences. So what I might actually encourage you, like we'd want to have you talk, we have a healthcare professions advisor. So if someone is interested in going on to medical school, that's going to be your go-to person, to start making sure that you're making the most of the resources at Hood in order to go on to medical school. I actually sit on the committee that writes Hood's composite letters. So if you're unfamiliar with medical school, many schools have what's called a committee that will write your recommendation letter for medical school. Currently, most programs are looking for what's called a composite letter. That's all of the science faculty. Every last one of them will write a letter for you, and that letter goes into your file. And then when it's time for you to apply to medical school, the committee will write one letter that has everybody's information in order to help you apply. If a medical school knows that your school has a composite letter committee, but you're only sending individual letters, that looks really suspicious. So everybody, we're talking every biology class, chemistry class, every class that would go into a pre-med curriculum, they're going to be contributing. And I am on that committee, which means psychology has a voice at that table. So some people have found it best, if you're interested in medical school, to major in one of the basic sciences like chemistry or biology, but perhaps have a psychology minor. So it really depends, but you can absolutely be pre-med with a psychology degree. So, but you just have to be prepared to make sure you're having research experience and that you have good mentoring by your faculty members wherever you go. And that's one of the special things about going to a small college like Hood. You'll have a chance to get to know faculty really well. We don't have any TAs teaching any course. I'm a tenured faculty member and I teach intro to psychology. So you're going to have, the size of my class is around 25. If that. And I know everyone by name, and it's a great opportunity. So I just want to make sure that, if you're interested in going on to any kind of professional school, medical school, law school, having those small classes, lots of access to faculty, and also access to do things like research that most grad students get to do at a small school like Hood, especially in a department like our psychology and counseling department where there's a lot of research going on, you're going to have tremendous opportunities. You'll look very strong for medical school. The key thing though is you want to get connected with that health care professions advisor, and that person can help guide you on how you should best do your course selection. Any other questions?
We have just a couple minutes left, and we have a couple questions. One is, should I take psychology and sociology and then go to counseling? And then the other is, what would you recommend to minor in that would complement psychology?
Ooh, you know what I think? Well, I'll do the second one first. That's a quick one. I really like people who are psychology majors and business minors, because if you're interested in doing any kind of applied work, you're going to need to set up a practice. And I did not get that advice as an undergrad myself, and I wish I had. And so business as a minor could be good. Some people like political science, some people like African American studies, some people like you get to pick something that's interesting. Maybe you want to go on and study neuropsychology, where you want to do testing of people who might have had closed head injuries or things. Then maybe you want to look into biology or something like that to complement your psychology degree. So the door's wide open. But those would be some suggestions that I would have depending on where you want to take your degree. Remember, not all psychologists do therapy. So if you're fascinated by why people think what they think, feel what they feel, and do what they do, but you don't want to do therapy, we got space for you. There's several different pathways in psychology that are primarily research based and have nothing to do with therapy for people. So depending on what your interests are, how you complement that, what else you would do as far as a double major or minor, you might want to think about those issues. So that's that. I don't think you need to do sociology as a double major unless you choose to in order to go on and do that therapy work with foster kids. I think psychology can get you there, but I definitely would say if you're interested in sociology and would want to go on forward in psychology and continue, or excuse me, sociology, I think it would be perfectly fine for you to consider both. That's another really good advising question based on your interests and where you like to go. But if you like psychology and sociology, you have the flexibility to do both.
All right, we've got to wrap up. Just want to say thank you to everybody for joining in. The next thing is a hood hello, and this is you go back to the landing page to pick the hood hello, and also be sure at some point today to do a survey so that we can send you a T-shirt. Again, thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you all again. Congratulations and best wishes to you. Take care. I think that just leaves us.
Yep, that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, how'd that go?
I thought it went really well. They were none of them wanted their video to be shown. I went and like clicked on the show your video, and none of them wanted to show their video. So uh,
That is, I guess, well, I don't know if who we were talking to. Maybe we were talking to their parents.